If you're in your 50s and you've built a solid financial position, good super, maybe significant assets outside it, you've done the hard part. But the people I see struggle most in retirement aren't the ones who ran out of money. They're the ones who got the financial side right and still found retirement harder than they expected. So in this video, I want to talk about what actually determines whether retirement works beyond the balance sheet. Because there are a few things that matter just as much as super, and most people in their 50s aren't thinking about them yet. This is something that comes up consistently in my work with clients. Someone arrives at retirement in genuinely good shape. Good super balance, investment property, shares outside super, mortgage gone, everything they were told to build. And within the first 12 months, something feels off. Not financially, just not quite right. And when you dig into it, it's almost never about the money. Now, a quick note before I go further. This is general in nature, so it's important to consider your own situation. But the patterns I'm going to describe show up consistently enough that they're worth understanding. Let's start with something most financial conversations skip entirely: purpose. For most people in their 50s, work isn't just income. It's structure, it's identity. It's a reason to get up at a consistent time. It's a social environment, it's a sense of contribution. And when it stops, all of those things stop with it. The financial plan accounts for the income replacement, but it doesn't account for the identity replacement. And that gap is one of the most common sources of difficulty in the first year of retirement. I've had clients, people with more than enough, who were genuinely lost in the first 6 months, not because of money, because they hadn't thought about what they were retiring to. They'd spent 20 years thinking about what they were retiring from. And those are two completely different questions. This matters financially more than people realise, because someone who hasn't worked on their purpose in retirement tends to make worse financial decisions. They underspend because they feel uncertain. They delay choices because nothing feels settled. They hold on to assets they should restructure, because change feels uncomfortable when everything else already feels unfamiliar. Purpose isn't a soft concept, it has direct financial consequences. The second thing is health, and I want to be careful here because this isn't about being an alarmist. It's about being practical. Your health in your 50s directly determines the quality of retirement you can actually live. Not the one on the spreadsheet, the real one. The ability to travel when you want, to be physically active, to engage with grandchildren, to do the things you spent decades planning to do. And what I see quite often is people in their 50s treating health as something they'll get to after they retire. But the habits you build now determine the capacity you have then. There's also a direct financial dimension to this. Poor health in retirement is expensive. Healthcare costs, reduced ability to manage your own affairs, earlier need for supportive services. And beyond the cost, poor health compresses the window in which you can actually enjoy what you've built. The early years of retirement are typically the most active. The window for big travel, physical adventure, and high energy experiences is roughly the first 10 years. And after that, energy and capacity naturally reduce. So the financial plan that assumes you'll spend heavily in years 1 through to 10 only works if your health supports it. The third thing is relationships, and specifically whether the people closest to you are aligned with what retirement looks like. We covered the couples conversation in another video. I'll link it below, but it applies more broadly than just partners. Your relationships with your children, your friendships, your social infrastructure. These things don't maintain themselves automatically. When the structure of work disappears and people who enter retirement with strong, active relationships navigate the adjustment far more smoothly than those who've let those connections thin out during busy working years. Again, there's a financial dimension here. Social isolation in retirement is one of the strongest predictors of poor health outcomes, which cycles back directly to the financial consequences we just discussed. These things aren't separate, they compound. Now let's talk about assets, because this is where it gets particularly relevant for people who have built significant wealth outside super. A lot of Australians in their 50s have done exactly the right thing financially. They've built super, they own investment property, they have shares or managed funds, some have business interests. And the question that doesn't get asked enough is this: Do those assets actually serve your retirement lifestyle, or are you serving them? Because here's what I often see. Someone has a portfolio of assets that made complete sense during the accumulation phase. Investment property generating modest yield, shares held in a structure that was tax effective while earning, business assets that require ongoing attention, and then retirement arrives. And those assets don't actually produce the income or the flexibility they need. The property has low yield and high maintenance. The shares are in a structure that creates tax complexity in drawdown. The business interest still requires time and attention when they were supposed to be free. Net worth on paper looks strong, but the actual retirement experience feels constrained. This is one of the most important planning conversations to have in your 50s. Not just, how much do I have, but how do my assets need to change to support the retirement I actually want? Because the structure that built your wealth isn't automatically the structure that funds your retirement. And the earlier you start thinking about that transition, the more options you have. So what does this all mean practically? A few things worth thinking about in your 50s. First, start thinking about what you're retiring to, not just from. What gives you purpose? What gives you structure? What will your days actually look like? These aren't soft questions, they're planning questions. Second, treat your health as a financial asset. The investment you make in your physical and mental health now determines the retirement you can actually live, not the one on paper. Third, review your asset structure with retirement income in mind, not just the asset value. Income, flexibility, accessibility, tax position in drawdown. Those are different criteria to the ones that mattered during accumulation. And fourth, maintain and invest in your relationships actively. The social infrastructure you have at retirement largely determines how well you navigate the adjustment. Here's the thing about super and assets. They're necessary. Without them, retirement doesn't work financially. But they're not sufficient. The people I see thrive in retirement have the financial foundation and they've thought carefully about everything that sits on top of it. Purpose, health, relationships, asset structure that actually serves them. That's what makes retirement work, not just the number. If you're approaching retirement and want structured guidance rather than figuring this out alone, I work with Australians in exactly that position. You can find details below.